It's finally that time of year where I thrive the most. The air is crisp and the leaves are changing. Call me basic, but I decorate my house during autumn like most decorate for Christmas. And guess what? I like a pumpkin spice latte to go with it. In honor of today being the first day of fall, I have created the ultimate fall mashup video. You have already joined me as I shared my decor. Now, let's make a delicious autumn treat and talk fall book recommendations. Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Crissy and this is my cozy corner. In today's video, we're gonna be talking all things fall. So you saw my decor in the intro. I'm gonna be going over some of my favorite reads for this time of the year, my fall reading recommendations. But first, I want a little snack that gives those autumn vibes. So we're gonna head over to the kitchen real quick and make some pumpkin cookies to snack on for when we talk about those fall reading recommendations. Let's go. Now I'm going to show you how to make my famous pumpkin cookies. They're going to be the perfect snack to go with the fall book recommendations. They are a staple in my house. My family loves them so much. I do try to make them at least once a year. So they're so good because they're so moist and they're not quite the texture of a cookie and also not quite the texture of a cake. It's like a mashup of the two. There's literally nothing like it in my opinion. I'm also going to be making my homemade buttercream frosting to go with it. So I do like to go ahead and measure out my ingredients so it's easier just to dump and go, but I will be also giving the measurements as we go. So let's go ahead and get started on these cookies. First, you will need to preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit and spray your baking sheet. You're going to need 4 sticks of butter, 2 cups of sugar, 2 teaspoons of baking powder and baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt, nutmeg, cinnamon, 2 teaspoons of vanilla, 2 eggs, 1 15-ounce can of pumpkin, and 4 cups of flour. You're gonna need a paddle mixer for this recipe, so fit that on there nice and tight. Start by adding your butter, and you're going to mix on medium until it is nice and light and fluffy. Make sure to scrape down the edges of your bowl while mixing, and now we're ready to add our sugar, salt, baking powder, baking soda, nutmeg, and cinnamon. Now we are going to mix until the dry ingredients are all combined with the butter, and then make sure you scrape off your paddle and scrape down the edges on your bowl to get the most out of those ingredients. Continue mixing until it looks nice and fluffy like you see in the video. Now we will add our eggs and vanilla to our mixture and then fit it back onto the mixer and continue mixing that up, still on that medium speed. Now we're ready to add the pumpkin, which is my favorite ingredient. So we're going to open that can up and add the entire 15-ounce can to our bowl. You're going to mix this on medium until it's well combined. It kind of looks like buffalo chicken dip, which is weird, but hey. Now we're ready to add our flour. So I add about 1/2 cup at a time, slowly mixing on low. Your dough should be very wet and sticky, so now we are ready to scoop our dough onto our baking sheet. I scoop about a tablespoon because of course they do get bigger in the oven. You're going to put your cookies in the oven for 10 to 12 minutes, but I found 11 minutes is best. While the cookies are cooling, we're going to make our buttercream frosting. We're going to start with 2 sticks of butter and blend that until nice and fluffy. You are now going to slowly add the 2 cups of powdered sugar, blending on a medium speed, and scrape your bowl down as needed. Now we're going to add 3 tablespoons of heavy whipping cream while our mixer is still running on medium speed. Now it's time to add our last ingredient, so we're going to add 1 tablespoon of vanilla while our mixer is still on medium speed. As you can see, it's starting to turn into frosting. For this next part, you're going to want to make sure those cookies are cool, and this is my favorite part. We're going to ice our cookies. I'm using a mini spatula from Michael's Arts and Crafts, but a butter knife will do. It's not the most beautiful job over here, but it will do, and it's going to taste delicious anyway. And last, I love to sprinkle a little bit of ground cinnamon to the top of my cookie. It gives it such a nice flavor and it looks super cute. Voila, they are ready to eat, but I love to refrigerate these puppies for about an hour. Woo, it gets hot in that kitchen. Okay, so I have... I'll be right back. Okay, let's try this again. Here's my cookie. I let it sit in the fridge for like an hour or two, so let's try it. I got some coffee over here. I tried it earlier, not in the fridge, and it's so much better cold because it reminds me of pumpkin pie. Oh my goodness. Coffee and cookie. It's like muffins and banana bread with coffee. It's the same thing. I could eat this for breakfast. It's so good. Look at that. Okay. We're going to save the rest of that for a little bit later. And then we're going to go ahead and get into these fall books. We have fantasy recs, romance, thriller. So there is truly something for everybody in this video. I'm going to start with the fantasy category first. I believe that is the chunkiest category. Surprise, surprise. So the first book I would like to recommend to you is Belladonna by Adeline Grace. This starts off with our main character, Signa, and she cannot die. She has been an orphan her whole life, and she's bounced around to different guardians who are just really interested in her wealth and not really like her well-being. So when all of these people, all these guardians come to an untimely death, she goes to live with her last remaining relatives, the Hawthorns. When a murder happens and somebody falls very ill, Signa is trying to uncover who is the person responsible for this. So with that, she decides to make an alliance with Death himself. You know, he who comes and collects you when you're passing on. She can see him and nobody else can. Remember, Signa cannot die. So yeah, overall, I thought this was such a fun read, and I really, really love the gothic feel, and that gothic feel embodies kind of what you want with that like gloomy fall atmosphere. And if you're gonna read this, then you're gonna wanna read A Foxglove. Although I did feel like I liked this book overall better. I liked a character in here. I feel like he is my favorite in this series, which is kind of similar to how I feel about Caraval. That one is on here too. The next book I wanna recommend to you for the fall is going to be Kingdom of the Wicked. So just to give you in a couple words, think of witches, spells, magic, hot hell princes, demons. It really embodies the fall, like atmospheric vibes. If you're gonna read this, it's Kingdom of the Wicked. Then Kingdom of the Curse. I feel like I really, really liked the first two. And then Kingdom of the Feared. I kind of felt like there were some plot holes, let's just say that. So it's not like my favorite series in the world, but I feel like it was a fun fall-y read, like a quick fun fantasy. So yeah, but I'm currently reading, speaking of Kingdom of the Wicked by Carrie Maniscalco. My current read is actually Throne of the Fallen. I'm assuming that this one would also fall in this category. I'm almost done with it, so I definitely would recommend it. I'm liking it so far, but I feel like I don't like to like review a book until I'm done with it. But I feel like since it's the same world, because it is the 7 deadly princes, the 7 deadly sins, that is Kingdom of the Wicked, and you do follow one of the princes that you meet in that other series. So they both have the atmospheric vibes. But again, I don't want to like talk about this one or review this one until I finish it, because I am currently like, I don't know, 100 pages shy from finishing it. So when I finish it, I definitely will review it, but it is giving off fall vibe. So we're still in the fantasy category, and I feel like for fall, you can't really go wrong with any fantasy, but the ones on this list specifically reminded me of fall above any of the other ones. This next one I feel like might be the one on the list that embodies fall the most in my opinion. So that's going to be One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig. This is a duology, and I feel like this is perfect for this time of year. So if you haven't read it, I feel like you should pick it up in October. Our main character, Elspeth, has an ancient spirit stuck in her head, and people in the land are becoming infected with fever, which is punishable by death if found out. These books have a misty, foggy feel about them that I actually really look for this time of year, with a eerie tone and a unique magic system, which kind of reminded me of tarot cards. This was made for October. Like, these were made to read in October. Please go read them this fall season. The next one, in my opinion, is tied with One Dark Window as far as atmospheric vibes goes, and that's going to be Ninth House and Hellbent by Lee Bardugo. I'm gonna hold this one up because Hellbent is the second in the series, but think like creepy Yale, but like an alternative reality with like fanatical elements. I talked a lot about this one. I talk about it in my favorite books of all time video, which I will link in the description. But Alex Stern is the main character, and she ends up being involved in like a multiple homicide, and she's the only one left living, and she gets an opportunity to come to Yale on a full ride because she has this special ability where she can see ghosts, but they call them grays, but they're pretty much ghosts. So this one is a very paranormal one, so that's why it makes me feel like fall. The second one I feel like is a more high stakes fantasy, but this one is a lot of fun. Because of those abilities that got her a second chance at Yale, she is tasked to monitor the societies because there is some shading things going down, and she is definitely very suspicious of them when she gets into the thick of it. So there is another character that she's working alongside named Darlington, and I absolutely love their dynamic. And in the second book, Hellbent, there's a lot of side characters that I ended up loving, but yes, both are absolutely wonderful for the fall season, and they're two of my favorite books of all time too. So I will always recommend these books anytime somebody asks me. Okay, so the next book I read during my 24-hour readathon, and I reviewed it in my August reading wrap-up, which I'll link both of those videos in the description below, but that's going to be Heartless Hunter by Kristen Cicerelli. It is about a witch rune and a witch hunter named Gideon, and after the revolution, witches are outlawed and hunters are hunting them to get rid of them because of their magic. This is a very unique magic system. While I was reading it, I could not help but think how the setting would be perfect if I had read it in like September or October. So I kept saying that. I was like, man, I should have saved this for the fall. So because of that, I am putting this on the list, and I really did like this one. I thought it was a great first book in a series. But the last book in the fantasy category that I would recommend you read for the fall is going to be Caraval by Stephanie Garber. This is about Scarlett, who lives on an island with her sister Tella and her terrible father, and all she's ever wanted to do was get away from him and attend this once-a-year performance where the audience gets to participate and interact in. Just when Scarlett thought she had missed her opportunity to attend the amazing show that she's been wanting to attend, a mysterious sailor sails her and her sister Tella off and to the show, and once they get there, her sister Tella is kidnapped, and that ends up being what the show or the game revolves around, is her sister's kidnapping. If you pick up Caraval, it is a trilogy, so you're gonna wanna read Legendary, which centers around her sister, and then Finale, which is kind of both of them. I will say one of my favorite characters in this series shows up here. He's a side character, and he gets his own book, which is Once Upon a Broken Heart. He ends up being like one of the main characters in that book. So although he's like a side character in this book, he just like, I feel like steals the show every single time he comes in a scene, and I loved him so much. His name's Jack, so if you read it, you know who he is. I love him. He ends up again being in the spin-off series Once Upon a Broken Heart, which I like that series better than this one. The next book is Fantasy and Dark Academia, and that's going to be The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. This follows 6 different point of views, and because of their amazing magical abilities, they're asked to attend the Alexandrian Society. After a year is up, one is to be eliminated. Now this one gets a lot of mixed reviews. I've only read the first 2. I know the third one is out and it got very low reviews, but I will say I really did like the first 2. It is a very much, to me, like a very interesting read. I thought the writing was beautiful, although a little too pretentious at times, but I was okay with it. My issue with it was Olivia Blake didn't really describe things, like what did the library look like in the book and all that kind of stuff. So it was quite hard to visualize some parts of the book, but overall I really liked the plot and I loved how terrible all the characters were. The next genre we are going to be talking about is one of my all-time favorites besides fantasy and romantasy. Is going to be dark academia. So one of my favorite books, it is Vicious by V. Schwab, and then it's a duology, so the second one is Vengeful. I did like Vicious better, but I still also liked Vengeful. So this is about Victor and Eli, who have a shared interest in a research project that they're doing for their college. When a near-death experience happens, it provides them with some superhuman powers, which ultimately lead to intriguing possibilities for them. And it walks the line of good and evil, and is somebody good and is somebody evil, and what you actually think is good and evil. So I love this book. I thought it was so unique. It's very different from any book I've ever read. It was amazing. The setting and just it being dark academia, I think really fits this time of year. I think you're really missing out if you do not pick up this book. It is so good. The next fall recommendation I have for you is quite possibly one of my favorite books of all time, and that is If We Were Villains by ML Rio. I love this book. I wish I tabbed it. I wish I annotated it. I'm gonna reread it and do it. But this is 7 friends in college studying Shakespeare. They do a lot of like talking Shakespeare to each other. They're cast in these plays, and a lot of their roles are parallels to things that are going to happen in the book. I caught on to that just because I am familiar with Shakespeare. There is a murder that happens that you're trying to figure out, but you kind of forget about that because of all the other stuff that's going on, and how every time they're cast in a role, it seems like their character somehow like bleeds into their life. But this was so, to me, this is like a work of art. Like, everybody read this one. If you're gonna read anything on this list, read this one. Like, really, please. The next book that I would definitely recommend for this season is going to be Bunny by Mona Awad. This book was weird. I liked it though. I really liked it. So this I would definitely classify as dark humor and dark academia because it is in a college setting. Samantha is in a university writing program, and she has these girls in her writing cohort. They call themselves the Bunnies, and they have this thing called the Smut Salon. Samantha and her friend Ava tend to kind of like make fun of these girls because the way they talk, and they all call each other Bunny, and they talk kind of weird. So then she gets an invitation to attend the Smut Salon with the Bunnies, and she feels surprisingly drawn to everything that's going on there. Now, again, I thought this book was really weird. I was confused half the time, but I thought that was the fun of it. This definitely wouldn't be for everybody, but the setting is perfect because it talks about it being fall and autumn and the leaves changing and the chilly cold atmosphere, and the whole culty dark academia aspect was very much like, I was sitting there saying, man, I wish, again, I would have saved this to read in the fall. Like, those were my exact thoughts while I was reading this. So I really also thought that the symbolism was done really well in this book. So this is another really good one to check out for the fall, but I am warning you, it is weird, but for me, 4 stars in a good way. The next one is not quite dark academia, but it is dark, and there is academia elements, but I would say it's more literary fiction. Definitely check trigger warnings. This book is not for everybody, but I loved it. It's one of my favorites. I just thought it was so real and raw. And that's going to be My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. I really love this book because the character's journey is so rough. So in this book, you have young Vanessa who engages in an inappropriate relationship with her 42-year-old teacher when she's just 15 years old. This does have past to present chapters. Your past chapters really delve into the relationship and how he groomed her. And the present chapters are her still kind of in denial, but coming to a slow realization of what actually happened back then. The reason I recommend this for fall because much of the setting is in the fall. It is said to be in the fall. It does describe fall and atmospheric elements that go along with autumn, but also the darkness of the book, I think, really goes with the vibe of that season. I wouldn't necessarily like recommend this. I am recommending it as a fall read if you are comfortable reading this type of subject matter, but it is hard to read it sometimes. But overall, I really liked reading about a story that felt real, like it really could happen to somebody, has happened to somebody, and it felt like this is the kind of story that people need to hear about. Like Vanessa needed to be heard if she was willing to be heard, but it took her a long time to be willing to even talk about and admit to it. She really masqueraded this relationship almost as if she thought it was a fairy tale, when that clearly wasn't the case. We are now going into the next category, which is going to be thriller, and these next two really are kind of like teetering the line between dark academia and thriller, but they are marketed as thriller and are very much more so thriller. So that's going to be In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead. It sort of reminded me of We Were Villains just a little bit. Not a lot, just a little. Just the fact that you have 7 friends studying together in college and they're all kind of terrible people, and then a murder happens. But if We Were Villains obviously is more focused on the Shakespeare and the dark academia than the thriller, whereas this is more focused on the murder. Although I did guess some things that happened in this book, I thought this thriller was a ton of fun. I thought that the writing was very visually pleasing, especially when you're trying to read something that is atmospheric around this time of year. Saying that I actually like this book says a lot, because I really don't like thriller too much as a category, because I find lots of thrillers disappointing or not shocking, which I'm not saying that this was shocking. I just thought it was written in a way that made it thrilling, I guess, is what I'm trying to say about it. The next book is very much a thriller, but it still has those dark academia aspects that most people look for during this time of year, and that's going to be The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead, the same author who wrote In My Dreams I Hold a Knife. Now, this twist I figured out pretty easily, but I'm recommending it because of the way it's written is very thrilling. I find thrillers not always thrilling. Like I said, I find a lot of them disappointing, a lot of them easy to figure out. And again, while I figured the plot twist out, the ride was a blast. This is about Shay Evans, who gets stuck in a cult with her friends when she's younger in college. Again, there's the academia aspect and the dark part of it as well. This is told in past to present timeline. So in the present, she finds out one of her old college friends that they were in a cult together gets murdered, and she's trying to avenge her. By doing that, she is working with another old friend of hers, and he has her on her podcast, and she starts discussing the past with him and how her and her friends ended up in the situations that they ended up in. This one was just a really fun one. Like I said, even though I figured it out, I just really thought the whole story was just so much fun, so interesting, and again, had those dark academia aspects that I always am looking for in the fall time. Actually, or any time. Next one is a classic, and that's going to be And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie. 10 strangers are allured to an island, and they're all picked off one by one. It was so much fun. The next one, this author is kind of a hit or a miss for me, but I feel like he has been more of a hit, and that's going to be Survive the Night by Riley Sager. This is another one where I figured out the plot twist, but it was so much fun. The setting was very fall. Now, our main character needs a ride back to Ohio, so she goes over to the campus ride board in her college. She ends up getting a ride from a stranger who also goes to the same school as her, but as she's in the car this whole time, he starts doing these suspicious things, and then she starts suspecting him. There's like a campus serial killer at her school. What I really loved about this, it's like that dark, foggy atmosphere. The fact that the setting was in the car and it still kept my attention the whole time, and it's the 90s. I grew up in the 90s, or I was born in the 90s, 91, so I really like that about this. So the last book in the thriller category is going to be a series, and that's A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. So it's first A Good Girl's Guide to a Murder, then Good Girl, A Bad Blood, and As Good as Dead. This one was crazy. So this is a young adult thriller murder mystery, but I feel like this does the genre better than some of the adult books I've read, because like I said, it's not my favorite category, but this is actually one of my favorite series of all time. I have not seen the show yet. Hopefully it lives up to my expectations, but I have been putting it off. So anyway, this is about Pip. She's a senior in college, and she decides to do her last senior project on a closed case that has haunted the town. There was a girl named Andy from their high school who was brutally murdered by her boyfriend, and then he committed suicide, but Pip does not think that's exactly what happened. So this was so much fun. It was so good. I felt like a lot of the twists in these I didn't see coming, and I would highly recommend it for the fall time. Okay, so now we are in the romance category. The first book I have is going to be Out on a Limb by Hannah Boden Young, and the main reason I recommend this is the story takes place at a Halloween party. That's where our main characters Wynn and Beau meet, and they have a one-night rendezvous, and they end up being in each other's lives a lot longer than expected. I really love the disability representation between both characters. I loved the conversations and the communication between both these characters and the friendship that they had. I think this is such a great read for whatever time of year, but again, because of the Halloween party, read it in October. The next romance book I think you should have your eye on this fall is going to be Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino. So this is about Grace and Matt, who met 15 years ago in college, and they become fast friends and they are inseparable, which quickly leads to a romance. But as college ends, they end up going their separate ways, and Matt ends up seeing Grace 15 years later when she is getting on the F train, and he puts out a missing connections on Craigslist, and he's trying to kind of reconnect back with her. So this is another really great one for past and present timelines. The reason I would recommend this for fall is because we do have that academia setting in New York, and I think the combination of those two things really just scream that season. Next book I recommend that you should read this fall if you want a good romance but kind of leaning on the literary fiction side, that's going to be Normal People by Sally Rooney. This is about Connell and Marianne, and they kind of grew up in the same town, went to the same school. Marianne was not really cool, and then Connell was kind of the cool kid at school, but then they end up having kind of like a secret romance, and this takes them through their lives over many years and the ups and downs between their relationship. Some years they're together, some years they're reconnecting, and for whatever reason, and maybe it's because they were in school, they were in college in some parts, and then of course they were in high school in the beginning, there was kind of a gloomy tone, and that always just reminds me of fall. Last books that I have in the romance category I think are perfect to wrap up this video because they are specifically for Halloween. That is going to be The Ex-Hex and The Kiss Curse by the same author, Erin Sterling. This one is about two estranged exes, Vivian and Reese. Reese ends up coming back in town after 9 years, and they end up reconnecting because there's a curse on the town, like talking cats, toys moving around, ghosts, and all that stuff. So they work together to try to fix the town and obviously end up reconnecting. So I thought this was a really cute rom-com, and I gave it like 3 stars, but I still think it's a really fun one for this season, and I would definitely still recommend it if you want like a fun, very like small town. I guess it would remind me of like the very small town like in Hocus Pocus or Halloween Town, if you ever watched those on Disney a long time ago back in the 90s. This kind of gives those same like small towny type of vibes where they're trying to kind of save the town from the curse. I thought that was really cute about it. The romance was really cute. There was some spice in it, so it's a good fun time. I would say that I have similar feelings about The Kiss Curse that I had about The Ex-Hex, that it was just like a cute fun time. They are set in the same world. The main characters are related to these main characters, but this one is about Gwen and Wells, and Gwen owns a witchy shop in town, and Wells ends up moving back to town and fixing up a property across the way, and he ends up having his own like similar type of shop. So there's a lot of like heated competition between the two of them, and of course things get spicy. So again, these are a good fun time. They're not like the best things in the world, but I really love the whole small town, Halloween town-ish aspects. Like, think Gilmore Girls small town, that type of feel, but Halloween town mixed with it, I guess. I definitely recommend these if you're just looking for a good fun time and not take yourself too seriously. Alright y'all, that is the end of my all things fall video. I was really excited to do a mashup of a couple different things that represented my favorite season. I really do hope you enjoyed this video, and I do post videos every Sunday. I do hope to see you back then. Have a wonderful night, guys. Bye.